Most of us don't think about money other than what we're spending on and selling. But did you know there's more to money than just that? Unfortunately, so many of us have not been told about the secrets of money. There's a reason the 1% are at the level they are. They know the secrets and they follow the rules. If you want to be a part of their clan, here's some wealth building principles that you can follow too. 1. Invest in appreciating assets. I know you're wondering what appreciating assets are. Well, they're assets that increase in value with time. This includes the stock market, bonds, and real estate. While most may be stacking up on liabilities, people who understand money are purchasing appreciating assets. If you have a fully functioning phone but decide to buy the latest iPhone, because you know why not, this could be seen as a liability. Similarly, if you're constantly loaning luxury cars, bags, or clothes, you're also burdening yourself with liabilities. If you would like to build wealth, you need to know that your accumulated wealth is dependent upon what you do with your money. The idea is simple. If you buy an asset at a certain price, over time, it appreciates in value, and before you know it, you'll have something worth more than what you paid for. Since appreciating assets work through the power of compound interest, they don't just build linearly, but instead build exponentially. This means that if you invest $1,000 with a 10% interest, the next year you'll be starting at a base point of $1,100 and earning the 10% interest on that. As exciting as that sounds, investing your money always comes with the risk of losing it. However, it's better to risk it and get a possible rise in value, rather than purchasing liabilities with a sure decrease in value. 2. Avoid conspicuous consumption. As much as we may get the urge to fulfill our desires, nobody ever spent their way to financial freedom. Every day we're faced with the choice of deciding whether to give in to the consumption temptation today, or be patient and enjoy wealth tomorrow. Although tomorrow is never guaranteed, wouldn't it be better to take the risk of preparing for it, rather than it finding you off guard? Let's say you saw an advert about a vacation deal, or a discounted membership at the Gold Club. All these sound really great, but may result in a dent in your pockets. Like Frank Herbert said, seek freedom and become captive of your desires. Seek discipline and find your liberty. The choice is yours to make. Consumerism causes your limited resources to be directed towards lifestyle and away from building wealth. If keen enough, you'll notice that wealth builders live modestly by spending less than they can afford, in money, time, and energy. They do this to invest the difference for greater value in the future. The reality of wealth is that it's a form of delayed gratification. So if a flashy lifestyle is your aim, then consumption becomes a priority, which makes wealth eternally elusive. 3. Apply leverage to build wealth. When you have leverage, you have the tools to build wealth. You won't get wealthy by trading time for money, and you can't do it all yourself. You can't work like a donkey and expect to land on wealth. Leverage means you work smarter, not harder. The beauty of this is that it comes in various forms. Have a look at these. A. Financial leverage. This means that you can choose to invest and use other people's money without having to risk money from your pocket. B. Time leverage. Involve other people instead of exhausting the 24 hours you get in a day. C. Technology leverage. Using other people's equipment to increase output. D. Marketing leverage. When you involve other channels, the reach is more comprehensive than a one-on-one approach. E. Network leverage. Using other people's connections and approaches to expand beyond your own. F. Knowledge leverage. Utilize other people's talents, expertise, and experience that you may not possess. As you can see, leverage allows you to build more wealth than you could ever achieve alone, by utilizing resources that extend beyond your own. If you aren't using leverage, then you're working harder than you should only to end up with less than you deserve. And if being wealthy is your goal, using leverage is your best bet. 4. Detach yourself from things you don't need. Remember we talked about liabilities earlier on? Well, they're mostly what you need to detach yourself from. These are the material things that may offer you temporary joy, but in return mess with your financial prosperity. I mean, there's no need of paying hefty car insurance on a luxurious car when you're struggling to make ends meet. Letting go of certain liabilities will save you a lot in the long run. This doesn't mean you live like a miser. No, instead be frugal with your expenditure. Understand what makes you happy and enjoy it in moderation. It is a matter of reevaluating priorities. For example, instead of paying for cable TV, opt in for a streaming service instead that costs way less. Liabilities are the reason why you work so hard, but don't feel any richer with it. They give short-term satisfaction, but keep you from reaching your long-term goals. The best way to avoid getting things you do not need is to create a budget that works for you. A great budget helps keep your liabilities in check and save you from the terror that is debt. And if you're interested, you can download my free budgeting guide using the link in the description. 5. Identifying common money pitfalls. All of us might at some point have fallen into the hands of consumerism. We're often surrounded by businesses telling us why it would be great to give them money in exchange for something. However, as you give them this money, you're giving it away with no monetary benefit. All the while, they're garnering profits from your cash. Society is designed for you to spend as much as possible, yet provide a pinhole of opportunities for you to gain wealth. Don't believe it? Why is it that in school, we're always taught how to work hard and secure a good job, instead of how to actually generate wealth and make money? We're not taught how money works. One of the major misconceptions that hold people back from achieving their financial potential is the idea they need to trade their time for money. Why? The system requires the majority of us to remain in this money slavery trade. Although landing a good job may sound like a good fix, the problem is that an increased salary does you no good if you increase your expenses at the same rate. Also, many find themselves blinded by student loans, credit cards, and car loans that are all tied to interest rates. If you're not careful, large balances can cripple your finances for decades. Try to understand how interest works before committing to any form of monetary aid or cushioning. 6. Know where your money's going. Every penny matters, and if you don't believe it, try working on a no budget and see how bad your debt situation will be. Applying the basic principle requires you to sit down and review your spending habits. Something small, such as looking at your bills instead of stashing or throwing them away, will help you understand every item on your bill. Any form of fun or recreational spending should come after you've cleared your bills and funded your retirement and investment accounts. You might be shocked at how much you're throwing away by giving into guilty pleasures. Understanding every single cost will also enable you to understand how to best manage your money. If things are bad, you might come to find that you cannot afford to enjoy a latte every morning or daily lunch takeouts. You might also come across some monthly subscriptions that you may have forgotten. At this point of awareness, you'll be able to understand the dynamics at play, telling you how much everything costs and if you actually need them or not. 7. Automate, automate, automate. Sometimes it's just simply hard to keep up with the numbers, and so a hands-off approach is necessary, especially when it comes to money. A good example is how your employer automatically makes your retirement contributions. You simply don't have to worry about missing out on a payment once it's set up. So imagine automatically paying for those credit card bills or sending money into savings from your checking account, all thanks to automation. Not everyone has the discipline to keep tabs on everything, especially when it comes to paying bills. Automation saves us the pain of being charged late fees or unwanted interests. You wouldn't build a business without a proper business plan, so why should you compromise on building your wealth? Design your wealth plan based on proven business principles that lead to success. These principles include accurate record keeping and accountability, just to mention a few. 8. Be courageous. It's human nature to be cautious when venturing independently, simply because we are social beings. However, wealth doesn't come by following the crowd. It requires you to be an independent thinker and take the risk others chickened out from. To put it in layman's language, wealth will come from doing what others won't, so you can have what others never will. What you'll need is courage. It takes courage to be a self-starter and be self-responsible. With courage, you can walk new paths and develop new skills. If you wish to stand out from the crowd, you need to be courageous enough to put in the extra effort when others don't. Make financial freedom your #1 goal, and you'll find that every other voice trying to discourage you is muted. Remember, it takes courage to build wealth. It has little to do with money, and more with wanting to achieve a goal, so much that you make it your top priority. 9. Actively boost your income. Don't be comfortable with a basic salary. Even the average millionaire has more than one stream of income. If you want to begin building wealth in your life and for future generations, then it's time to place a higher value on wealth creation in your life and get organized with your money. I mean, why would you be given more money to manage if you can't manage what you've got? If we were to look into your wallet or purse, would you say the bills in there are well organized? If not, then you need to first plan and work with what you have as your horizons to more ventures. Look into avenues that can generate some passive income, since a hands-on approach could lead to burnout. You could also learn new skills and work on building wealth around that in your spare time. 10. Be disciplined. I can't stress this enough. Wealth is the cumulative result of many little things added together and compounded over a lifetime. Your daily habits will either make you or break you if you want to be successful. Most of us are victims of the #1 success killer, procrastination. You must begin the right habits today without delay, and this requires discipline. With discipline, you overcome procrastination by starting today and persisting tomorrow. The harsh truth is that there's no substitute for action. You either do it or you don't. What you'll be left with are simply excuses. Don't let anyone fool you.
Your true wealth is your time and freedom. Money is just a tool for trading your time. It's a container to store your economic energy until you're ready to deploy it. But the whole world has been turned away from real money and has been fooled into using currency. A deceitful imposter that is silently stealing your two most valuable assets, your time and your freedom. Welcome to the rabbit hole.
We are entering a period of financial crisis that is the greatest the world has ever known. The wealth transfer that will take place during this decade is the greatest wealth transfer in history. Wealth is never destroyed, it is merely transferred, and that means that on the opposite side of every crisis there is an opportunity. The great news is that all you have to do to turn this crisis into your great opportunity is to educate yourself. I believe that the best investment that you can make in your lifetime is your own education. Education on the history of money, education on finance, education on how the global economy works, education on how all of these guys, the central bankers, the stock market, how they can cheat you, how they can scam you. If you learn what is going on and how the financial world works, you can put yourself on the correct side of this wealth transfer. Winston Churchill once said that the further you look into the past, the further that you can see into the future. This program is all about creating your own crystal ball, being able to gaze into the future, being able to change this crisis, the greatest crisis in the history of mankind, into your great opportunity. The hidden secrets of money, some of them are hidden in plain sight. They're like right in front of you. The way the monetary system works is something that isn't actually hidden away from all of us. It's out in the open, but it's complex and people just they can't see how it works. It's hard for them to imagine that we're living in such a hoax. Others are meant to be secret, but the truth is slowly coming out, like the Federal Reserve being a private corporation and not really part of the US government. But when I started studying this, what I found was that there was no place that I could point people to where they could get it all in one spot. And so I basically decided to write my book about it and consolidate monetary history, economics, the markets, fundamentals of gold and silver. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors in economics, and I've sort of made it my job to lift the fog for people. Welcome to Egypt. This is where it all began. Roughly 5,000 years ago, the Egyptians started using gold and silver as their predominant form of currency. But it was not yet money. The pieces of gold and silver that they were using were odd sizes and weights, odd purities, so it still was not interchangeable, where each unit is the same as the next. This meant that nothing really had a price yet. You couldn't put a price of so many coins on something because they didn't have coins yet. Trade was still difficult. It was still a guessing game when it came to the exchange of values. One of the reasons that we are in the financial mess that we are today globally is that people do not understand the difference between currency and money. Currency is a medium of exchange, a unit of account. It is portable, durable, divisible, and something called fungible. Fungible means that each unit is the same as the next unit. A dollar in my pocket buys the same amount as a dollar in your pocket. Money is all of those things plus a store of value over a long period of time. Even financial planners, bankers, your accountant, they don't understand the difference between currency and money. The currency in your pocket is a medium of exchange. It's a unit of account because it's got numbers on it. It's somewhat durable, it's portable, it's divisible in that you can make change, and it's fungible. A dollar in my pocket buys the same amount as a dollar in your pocket. But because governments can print more and more and more of it and dilute the currency supply, it's continually transferring wealth out of your pocket, out of your bank account, to the government and to the banking system. The reason that gold and silver are the optimum form of money is because of their properties. It's an easy medium of exchange because gold and silver store a large amount of value in a very small area. It's a unit of account. Pure gold has the same value all over the planet. So an ounce of gold buys the same amount here in Egypt as it would in China or in the United States. It's durable. The same gold that Egyptians were using in trade 5,000 years ago is still here with us today. It does not corrode. It's divisible. You can make change with it. It's very portable. You could use something like oil as money. It's just that you can't carry around a barrel of oil on your back. It's fungible. Pure gold is the same wherever it is on Earth. Pure silver is the same wherever it is on Earth. It's limited in quantity. That's the reason that it maintains its purchasing power. Governments cannot print it. Over the last 5,000 years, only gold and silver have maintained their purchasing power. There have been thousands upon thousands of fiat currencies, currencies that are unbacked by gold or silver, and they have all gone to zero. It's a 100% failure rate.
Well, fiat currency, of course, is a currency that exists at the dictate or by fiat from a government. You say they have their printing presses, and the paper money rolls off the printing presses. And then they give it the fiat designation, which makes the currency official. It's just worthless paper. But when Ben Bernanke gives it the special sign, and they have the cult meeting at the Federal Open Market Committee meetings, it suddenly becomes currency.
If you look at what's really going on, it's a con game. And so there's confidence. Well, the Federal Reserve is very forthright about what they're doing. If you read their websites, they'll tell you it's a confidence game. They tell you that there's no intrinsic value in their money. They'll tell you that they print it backed by absolutely nothing. They actually display all these facts. But if you tell somebody in the public that this stuff is created out of thin air, there's no backing whatsoever, it's absolutely worthless, it's about as valuable as monopoly money, they'll look at you like you're nuts.
Is there an example throughout history of a fiat currency, a piece of paper that's unbacked by anything, surviving?
Short answer, no. Long answer, no. And here's why. When Addison Wiggin took over at the Daily Record, when they got cranked up, Bill Warner asked him to catalog all of the fiat currencies throughout history and what happened to each of them. Addison dutifully went to work. Within a short period of time, he had gone through the alphabet. All the fiat currencies that started with the letter A were done. They all went to zero. He was halfway through the letter B, and all the fiat currencies that started with the letter B, and there were 600 of them in just the first letter and a half of the alphabet, and every single one of them went to zero. Every one. 600 fiat currencies that start with the letter A, and half of the ones that start with the letter B are 600 of these things. Not one ever came close. You think this one, the United States dollar, is going to be the first one after all that? I don't think so. No. No currency, fiat currency has ever survived. None.
The thing about money is there actually is a fairly well accepted definition of what money is. The question is, as you apply that definition to particular things that people claim to be money, do they fit the definition? We'll just take the paper dollar, for example. How well does it perform those functions? Well, store of value. The dollar has lost 95% of its purchasing power since the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913. So not very good as a store of value. One of the things I do is just a way to get the audience's attention is I have a slide, and there are three pictures on the slide. One is a pile of monopoly money. The other one is a pile of Federal Reserve notes, what Americans would call paper money. The other one is a solid gold American Eagle 1 ounce coin. And the title of the slide is, which of these is not like the other? And if you know the show Sesame Street, or you have children who watch it, it's one of the favorite vignettes in Sesame Street. And what it really is a kind of IQ test for 5-year-olds. They're supposed to look at the 3 things and look at characteristics and find the one that's not like the other. Well, I've shown this slide to groups of Ivy League University professors, and I've also shown it to children, kind of 5 years old, my nieces and nephews and so forth. And when the professors look at it, they say, well, clearly the dollars are not like the others, because gold has no role as money, and monopoly money is junk, and the American dollar is a store of value, so that's not like the other. But the children look at it and they say, well, the gold coin is not like the other, because the other two are just piles of paper, and the gold coin is clearly something different. So my question to the audience is, who's smarter, a 5-year-old or an Ivy League professor?
Before World War I, each note that a treasury issued would say that there have been deposited with the United States Treasury $20 in gold coin payable to the bearer upon demand. The money was in the vault. The currency was a note they gave you that was a claim check, only a claim check on the money, the same as if you go to the dry cleaners and you give them your shirt and they give you a claim check for your shirt. The value is that shirt at the dry cleaners, not the piece of paper that says that you own that shirt. So our currency that circulated was the paper US dollars, and they were claim checks on money.
The next hidden secret is the difference between currency and money. Money must be a store of value and maintain its purchasing power over long periods of time. As we progress through this series, you'll learn that national currencies are really a tool used by the government and the financial sector to leech away your time and your freedom by stealing your purchasing power. So rather than storing your economic energy, currencies leak. Now compare that to the gold and silver the Egyptians were using. Like I started with, it still wasn't money because it wasn't interchangeable yet. But they were on the right track, as gold and silver have proven over thousands of years to be the ultimate store of value. Gold is only formed when a star explodes, a supernova, and it stays around forever. This is one of the properties that make it the ultimate money.
People are amazed that after 5,000 years, the pyramids are still here. But what I'm more amazed at is that the currency that the people that built this were using, that currency, that gold and silver that they were using in trade on a daily basis, is still around today. It may have been melted down and re-refined, and it's in a coin or a bar or in some piece of jewelry, but it's still with us today, and it still purchases something.
Yes, it is the ultimate money because there is nothing else even in the same league. It's divisible, it's permanent, it's a store of value, it's a unit of account. It's got everything you want out of money, but it doesn't go away, and it can't be increased. That is what makes gold the most beautiful money of all. What more could you ask out of a money?
It keeps governments under control. You can maintain a solvent system. Governments don't like gold at present because they're getting away with the fiat currencies, and they'll do everything they can to discredit it as an asset class. I mean, my goodness, gold has outperformed the Dow Jones Industrial Average in each of the last 7 years, yet it's not considered a legitimate asset class. Why? Again, it's the fear that maybe gold will be imposed on the system, that it will constrain government ability to spend beyond its means.
They can't print it.
They can't print it, no.
The proper definition of inflation, I use Milton Friedman's definition. Inflation is an expansion of the currency supply. Deflation is a contraction of the currency supply. If you expand the currency supply, eventually prices will rise. And if you contract the currency supply, eventually prices will fall. This is a pool, but it's not a pool of water. This is the currency pool. And these are prices. And if you expand the currency supply, prices like a sponge in water have to rise to suck up the excess currency. Governments never stop printing more currency and adding currency to circulation. Therefore, prices keep on going up, not because the stuff that you're trying to buy is changing. The real estate doesn't change. What has changed is the currency purchases less and less. It's the currency going down, not prices going up.
The truth is, what we have that makes our world work right now is a big story. None of it's real. It's all just promises. And if you think about it, that's how currency began to work in the beginning. You know, before we had currency, we had barter. I'll give you 3 coconuts and you give me 4 fish, because that's kind of a fair exchange on coconuts to fish. But that got complicated, so we had to invent this thing called money to be a divisible, portable medium of exchange. And the challenge is that we lost that a long time ago, and we lost having things of value be our currency. And now we have this thing called numbers and accounts. But trust me, it is not real. It's a big made-up story.
One of the biggest make-believe stories ever is called quantitative easing, which sounds complex, but it's really just a smoke and mirrors term for currency creation. QE started with the banking bailouts back in 2009. This currency was created out of thin air and then given to the banks, who paid themselves record bonuses in reward for crashing the world economy. This is a global phenomenon, but all you have to remember for now is that whether it's QE bailouts or stimulus programs, these are all just voodoo, hocus-pocus terms for increased currency creation.
I believe gold and silver will reassert themselves as money. And when they do, there just isn't enough, and their purchasing power is going to go up many, many, many times. Egypt is an amazing place. There's a franticness about it, and utter chaos, especially like the traffic. But when it comes to like all of the merchants that are trying to get every last dime out of you, you get fleeced to the point where you come back with an empty wallet. But you know what? They're amateurs compared to Wall Street. In the past several years, I've spoken in many countries about the crisis that's coming, and a lot of people think that they're going to be okay in their country, that it's only going to happen to the United States or maybe the United States in Europe. But what they don't realize is that this is a global phenomenon. I got to show you something here. This is base currency in the United States. This is the number of paper dollars that exist, basically. It took 200 years to go from no dollars in existence to 825 billion. And then we had the bailouts, and then we had QE1, quantitative easing 1, then QE2, and then we had QE3, and then QE4, and then soon we're going to have QE57 and QE382. And it isn't just here. This is what the Canadian currency supply looks like. This is Australia, South Africa, Russia. Now, this starts out in just the year 2001, and this is like 18 times more currency in existence in a little over a decade. Here's Singapore, same story. Look at that, since the crisis, just bam. India, China, every government on the planet is doing this insane deficit spending and expanding their currency supplies, doing bailouts, and history shows that there is no example of this turning out well.
It is sometimes amazing that we haven't experienced more inflation than we have. If they keep expanding the money supply so vastly, why aren't our prices growing faster than they really are? And the answer is that a good chunk of the money that the Fed created has been shipped overseas. I remember early in my research, I heard this expression that the Americans have exported their inflation. I thought, what is that? How can you export your inflation? Put it in a box and send it out? What do you do? Well, now I understand. You export your inflation by simply sending all these dollars that you created to these other countries, and then they send you their refrigerators and their cars and whatever, their TV sets. So you get hardware, and they get little pieces of paper. It's a great deal for the American people for a while. For a while. Sooner or later, all of those pigeons come home to roost. When the time comes, as it looks like it's now coming, When the rest of the world is saying, we don't want to play this game anymore. Uncle Sam's dollars are just becoming worthless. There are too many of them. We've got to find something else other than American dollars. Then those dollars start to come back to America. People say, we don't want them anymore. What do we do with them? Once this revs up and we've got this little trickle of money coming back that we previously exported, once it becomes a flood and it starts to rush back, now we are getting our former exported inflation brought back to us, and then we'll see the quantity of money inside the United States grow much more rapidly even than the Federal Reserve can create it, because we're getting a previous money back. And that's when we will really see the tanking of the US dollar in terms of what it will buy.
During the second round of quantitative easing, global food prices went up 60%. And this created a humanitarian disaster for the 2 billion people on Earth who live on less than $2 a day. These people were hungry to start with, they became hungrier, and some of them started overthrowing their governments in North Africa and around the Middle East. So quantitative easing was the spark that ignited the Arab Spring. So that's it. When you create money, you get some sort of inflation. It just depends on where the inflation goes.
It's all going down, down, down. Peasants are reeling from a game of coins and crowns.
Given the premise that you have a permanent underclass or poor class, and how does inflation affect them disproportionately, it affects them basically in the percentage of their income that goes to food. And we see this as a ratio, and we know that there are some danger points. For example, in Egypt recently, once that ratio got to 40% of income going to food and the price of food rising due to inflation, when it got to 40%, that's historically a point where people actually stage a revolution. That's exactly what we saw. The French Revolution, similarly, was all around the price of food getting to a certain critical point where people simply, the risk-reward for revolution was favorable toward revolution.
When they print it up, then it all goes down.
Well, exactly right, because when you have a runaway inflation, it's punishing the very people who are most productive in society. In other words, the people that produce more than they consume and save the difference. The problem is that those productive people, the savers, save in their national currency. And unfortunately, the national currency is just a fiat piece of paper at this point. So when it's destroyed through runaway inflation, that $100,000 that you were hoping to retire on doesn't exist. And the things that you were going to buy with it and provide for others don't exist either. Now what are you going to do?
So that all seems pretty scary. However, this is going to happen, and you can only play the hand that you're dealt. But the great news is that gold and silver always end up doing an accounting of the expansion of the currency supplies. Basically, the will of the public and the free markets. When governments do this kind of stuff to their currency supply, they debase it. Eventually it comes back in inflation. People sense the loss of their purchasing power. They rush back to gold and silver, and they bid the value of the gold and silver up in the country until it meets or exceeds the value of all the currency in circulation. This is a process that's been going on over and over again throughout history, except this time it's happening on a global scale. It has never before happened in all countries at once. And that means that this is the greatest wealth transfer in history. Therefore, it's the greatest opportunity in history, and it's not going to happen again in your lifetime.
So now we've learned that your true wealth is your time and your freedom. Money is a trading tool that stores the economic energy that is your time and freedom, whereas currencies leak them away. Gold and silver are the ultimate money simply because of their properties. Fiat currencies are based solely on confidence and always return to their intrinsic value of zero. Governments don't like gold because it imposes restraint. Rising prices are a symptom of an expanding currency supply, and gold and silver always account for an expanding currency supply.
If only there were one single road we could take to become rich, we'd all be rolling happily in money. But unfortunately for us, the road to success is not as easy as we would like. It requires a brave heart, sacrifice, and resilience to endure everything that it comes with. Since we all have different definitions of what rich is and different goals, the journey to success is always unique to everybody. However, there are steps that those who've succeeded took that we can learn from. And so, in this video, we'll be looking into the steps they followed to get rich. 1. Change your mindset on money. Robert Kiyosaki is the famous author of the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and he credits his rich dad's riches to his mindset. He even dares to conclude that you can only get rich in your mind first, before you become rich. He goes on to suggest that because his dad possessed a rich man's mindset, he always sought opportunities to get money, unlike his poor dad, who only saw his poverty and how it restrained him from doing anything. The right money mindset will have you set your goals in order, and you'll be motivated to go after them. It won't matter what it will take you to crush those goals, because you'll have the drive to push through. Woe unto you if you have a poor man's mindset, as you'll only be able to dig yourself deeper into poor financial decisions. It won't matter how much money you make, because it's like the last wish from a genie bottle. It will all disappear without a trace. Look at how stubborn the rich are about getting to their goals and targets. You should seek to emulate that. You'll discover that you have what it takes to become rich. That simply means that you'll find out the power that comes with being disciplined and having a changed mindset. 2. Build multiple streams of income. Have you looked at Elon Musk's investment portfolio lately? I bet you Tesla isn't the only company he's invested in. He's affiliated with SpaceX, DeepMind, SolarCity, among others. This man is the richest man in the world currently, and if you study his investment portfolio, he has his hands in as many honeypots as he can. This goes to show that true riches come from diversification and multiple income streams. That job that you solely depend on hasn't tied you down. You should consider starting a side hustle in your free time, or maybe get into real estate to earn extra money from rental payments. Utilize the little time to focus on a side hustle. There are also savings accounts that allow you to earn interest. The smartest money move you can make today is multiplying your sources of income. A pro tip that you could follow is pulling your side hustle towards a single idea. Like Elon Musk, who focuses his investments on technology. This means that you could be a part-time makeup artist, sell cosmetics, own a salon, and even teach people how to do their makeup. When you utilize this step, you'll realize that being rich isn't a far-fetched idea. 3. Add value. Whatever you feel the need to pursue, be it a business or career, it makes it more potent if it adds value. This trait is something common among rich folks. It helps them stay relevant despite the changing time, and that's why they can amass so much wealth. And they do this by being valuable and impactful in the services they sell to you. Can you imagine an instance where a top-notch brain surgeon walks into the best hospital looking for a job? For sure, he'll be offered the job and a lot of money because he invested his time and finances to learn and master his skills. The point here is the best foundation you can build for yourself is adding value to your life and others. Maybe then you can convince a multitude of people why your services come with a big paycheck. Okay, so I'd like you to do something for me. Pause this video right now and do me a huge favor by hitting the like button. If you did, you're awesome, and thank you so much for your support. 4. Create a plan and follow it. This should have probably been your step 1 to get rich, because there's no journey without a map. In this case, your map should be your plan. Inside should be the main goal that you're working towards, the routes you'll use to get to that destination. And when you're designing the route, it's important to be flexible. Have at least 1 or 2 extra routes to get to the goal, so that you don't find yourself giving up just because you reach a roadblock on your journey. Meticulously plan your finances, and also have a savings plan and an emergency fund. Be precise with detailing how much income you get per month, and where exactly you spend that money. Know how much of it you have saved, and how much debt you're paying. Create a budget and work within it as close as you possibly can. The chances of you become rich after taking this step almost triples. 5. Live below your means. There's a group of you who are watching this and believe it's impossible to become rich from nothing. With no handouts or support from family or friends, you believe that you're doomed to poverty. But that's not the case. If you could get a decent job, you already possess the key to riches. You simply have to start by living below your means. Save having to pay rent by living with your parents or sharing a house with a roommate. Deny yourself some of the pleasantries of life, like designer clothes, dining out, or partying. By doing this, you're safeguarding your financial future. It's a simple step, but many find it very difficult to adhere to. But if you struggle here, use some of these tips that I often use to help you navigate through it. Write down a monthly budget to work with throughout the month. The tricky part is overspending on grocery shopping. That's why you'd never catch me shopping without a list and a limit. I'm also a very savvy shopper who takes advantage of coupons and sales. These little everyday practices have allowed me to get ahead financially and move me closer to success. 6. Invest your money. I know that living paycheck to paycheck discourages you from investing your money, but you have to find a way for you to create wealth. That includes venturing into some investments. And you don't have to break the bank to get started. Instead, you start small and work your way up the investment ladder. For starters, you can research investing in the money market. This is a platform for the risk-averse who haven't yet got a grip on their investments. Then you can go into the stock market, and before you know it, you'll be investing in real estate and buying company shares. Grab any opportunity you get to learn about what type of investments are best for you. Another good thing is to invest in things that you have some sort of idea of. This will give you the independence to make decisions about your investment. Another good thing about investment is that you can learn more about it as you go. So don't be intimidated to start your investment journey today. 7. Find the right job for you. Not a single person has ever succeeded in doing that which they hated. So it's not a bad idea to find something you love and are good at, and then find a way to make money from it. It will leave you feeling much more fulfilled, even if it earns you the bare minimum. Some time back, it used to baffle me how some of my friends would wake up and just quit their jobs, without a backup plan or any hardcore reason for their actions. Most of the time, their reasons were the office culture was toxic, or they felt dissatisfied in their roles. But I saw no wrong, because at the end of the day, they had the fattest paychecks at the end of the month. But slowly, I realized that the checks didn't grow that fat by chance. They selected jobs that they loved, and were satisfied doing it for years later, without feeling drained or tired. It gave them a sense of purpose, and that's why they had climbed up the ladder. Unlike me, who accepted job offers depending on what amount of money I'll be paid, and nothing else. What I'm trying to say is, don't be like me. Find the job that suits you, and also, don't be afraid of leaving any time. 8. Take a calculated risk. In the quest of making money, there's always risk involved. Whether employment, starting up a business, or even investing your money in the stock market, there's some sort of risk involved. If you perceive things from this angle, you can better prepare yourself for whatever outcome. To make money, you have to take a chance on the idea you intend to execute. However, taking calculated and reasonable risks will help preserve your money. Many have fallen victim to investing their life savings in very risky avenues without even stopping to think for a bit, and such trends have ended in tears. To become rich, you have to be critical in your thinking, looking at every possible outcome before you dip your toes into unfamiliar waters. Even better, seek advice from financial planners who will help you understand the invincible loopholes and traps, or even possible lucrative opportunities. 9. Exploit the possibility of self-employment. We've all heard the scary stories that entrepreneurs have to tell. Some even claim that this venture is worse than your worst heartbreak. And I remember clearly my last heartbreak. It hit me hard, and I'd hate to think that anyone has ever experienced anything worse. You could exploit self-employment by starting your own business. On the other hand, you can utilize skills or talents that you already possess, like cooking, athletics, or artistry. But this means that you'll have to be exceptionally good at what you do, because there are more than a dozen experts in each of these fields. Work hard every day at your craft, train hard, learn new ways, and refine yourself often. This will set you apart from the rest, making you the one clients seek after often. You could write up a list of the people you'd like to emulate in your field. If it's Usain Bolt, look at how he practices his lifestyle and walk in his steps to ensure you're just like him or better. 10. Tax yourself. Everybody has a concept that helps them save cash. If you're looking forward to becoming rich, then you probably should consider your money as tax money. Place your savings money in a different account, or even better, open up a locked savings account where you'll be able to deposit at any given time, but unable to withdraw that cash. If you've ever paid taxes before, once you settle the bill, your tax money is as good as gone, and you no longer consider it as yours, right? Try doing this with your savings account, only withdrawing money that you can return in full at once, without a delay. As we wind up, I'd like to remind you that despite these steps being very independent, each one of them is codependent on the other, and I suggest that you do not just pick one of these steps and work on it alone. Take the first step and slowly but steadily work through all these steps to ensure you attain riches.
Vanderbilt actually had more money than the US Treasury. Wall Street's been really good at making people feel like insurance is boring, like it's not sexy.
They didn't really have these conversations that the Rockefellers did, and now the Rockefellers have over 200 people benefiting from the trust.
What is it that the Rockefellers do? This is the question I went in with. What is it that they do that anyone can do?
I think passing money on to the next generation tax-free is the easy part. I think having the person not feel entitled, not become spoiled, requires a lot of attention and intention along the way.
Multiple sources of distraction more than multiple sources of income is what happens, and focus on that cash flow first.
So a couple directions we're going to take this. First direction we're going to take is just talk about the Rockefeller conversation. And oftentimes people say, I want to create generational wealth. I want to create generational wealth. By the way, first question I want to ask you, because this has been a topic of intense debate amongst our offices, because we tend to recruit a lot of people from a real estate background, a tax background, a legal background, a t-shirt background. They got a clothing company. And a lot of people think that, man, I need to make multiple streams of income. And my pushback sometimes with them, which is not agreeable to a lot of them, I said, just focus on one thing real quick. Focus on one thing for the first, make your first cash flow million first. And then that's been my debate on it. And I don't know if you agree with that or not, but
I love that philosophy. And I do agree with it, Matt, because I feel like multiple streams of distraction can happen where we get spread thin. And what if one of the streams dries up? Now we go divert our attention to that and we're not caring for the other streams. And I kind of think about the Amazon River. It's this fresh river with so much life around it and so much life in it that I'd be scared to go in it, right? Yeah. And it flows so powerfully into the ocean that you can find fresh water for miles into the ocean where the Amazon comes in. So create that powerful flow. And when that powerful flow is maybe 80% something that happens without your daily attention and time, then it might make sense to create another stream. But the problem is, if we have a bunch of streams, they're just not powerful enough. And we get derailed and distracted, and I call it being diversified, because how could, and then it starts infringing upon our health and our family and time to ourselves, because we as human beings are terrible at discerning opportunity from distraction. And there are things that can make you money that are a distraction because they prevent you from making the most money. Literally a conversation I'm having with my business partner today is, some of our team members, one of them wants to make more money. And they're like, well, I was thinking about going and doing some freelance work. And I'm like, well, what if we could create opportunities within the organization and make sure that your time is most well spent versus getting into another thing that takes a lot of momentum? Because as you know, starting something from scratch requires Herculean effort versus when there's already a platform and already an infrastructure that you could plug into and build from, you can have accelerated results. So I started in 1998 selling life insurance. And the first type of insurance that I sold, actually in 1997, I bought a variable universal life, universal life, which I'm not a big fan of variable universal life based upon certain things. We could discuss that, but it got me in the game. And I started to ask questions. And then what I found was, selling insurance for a few years, from 1998 to 2005, I made a good living. It created recurring revenue. And I really focused my attention there. I didn't do assets under management. I didn't, build a lot of other things. It wasn't until 2005 we started to do workshops and I started to write, create a membership and do books and things like that, which eventually drew my interest and was where my heart was at, which I think has improved the industry. Like I've met a lot of people that I didn't know who they were. They're like, oh, thanks for your book. And I like that, right? Like that called to me, but there's not a lot of people that are weird and crazy enough to sit down and write a book. I have a book deadline this week, as a matter of fact, and it could be a bit strenuous. And it's like, we kind of forget about the pain as authors of writing a book and they're like, oh yeah, that wasn't so bad. And you're like, oh wait, the editing process and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's, there's a lot of people getting distracted because it looks good from the outside. Oh, I want to do that because someone else has done that. Or, ooh, I've got this opportunity over here and that opportunity. Ooh, maybe I could go flip NFTs and then I can go, buy the next crypto thing. And then I could do an insurance thing. And then I could get into real estate. And what happens is you never develop your expertise fully. You end up being able to give half effort or less to a bunch of different things that other people, if they put full effort to, will surpass you. And so I'm with you. Multiple sources of distraction more than multiple sources of income is what happens. And focus on that cash flow first.
Give us, you came from this insurance industry, and now you're moving on to the next chapter of your life, edutaining people through comedy. What would you tell a new agent today about the opportunity of the industry, the success of the industry, the good, the bad, the ugly? What would you say to a new agent today entering the field?
when I entered the field, they said that like 4 out of 5 people within 5 years were no longer in the field. And I think that if someone's thinking that it's a time for money thing, no, not all effort is created equal. So what type of training do you have? What kind of culture is there? What kind of like willingness do people have to help you, but are you willing to be responsible for the outcome of your income? This is basically an entrepreneurial venture within a structure. There's a structure where there's training and there's support, which a lot of entrepreneurs don't have, but your upside is only limited by your willingness to add value to people's lives, which means you have to gain a skill set of communication. So when you can find a firm that can tell you about what's wrong with the policy, the early firms I talked to couldn't tell me what was wrong with the policy that they preferred. You know, the VUL people, that was the only way to go. And then the whole life people, that was the only way to go. And it was like they were a one-trick pony. And so if you can get clear about the strategy, the tactics, and the pitfalls, then it's who helps you grow as an individual, who helps you to really recognize your potential and help you thrive. But you can only thrive through your own personal responsibility and accountability within that structure. This isn't a handout business, but it's one that can be richly rewarded if it calls to you. And it's one that I think can create a massive amount of value for the marketplace, because let's face it, like people that have millions of dollars get pitched all sorts of investments. But people that are just trying to make it, they need to design their insurance properly so they have safety, stability, security, whether they prematurely die that the money comes in or whether they live a long period of time that they still have cash. I feel like putting $50 into a mutual fund is like throwing it away, but you know, doing something, an insurance contract for the middle class, you can design that fairly close to how the Rockefellers did. And that's super unique, because if you want to get the investments the Rockefellers got to, good luck, you got to be the Rockefellers. But if you want to design insurance the way they did, you can come fairly close. They had private placement. You know, you're going to be inside of a contract that you can fund up until the MEC limits, and it's fairly close. It's not the same, but it's close. And it's infinitely closer than anything else that those wealthy families did with their money that you could actually do on your way up. And I don't know what 60 seconds is, because that was probably 180 seconds.
Hey, bro, it felt like 30, man. Yeah, I've been in the industry for a while too as well, and I just love talking about the journey of this. Like, for example, you know, the product itself hasn't changed my life. I'm still here. You know, it hasn't massively changed my life because, you know, I've barely dipped into my life insurance policy but the industry has changed my life absolutely 100%. You know, just being able to be an entrepreneur with no college degree, without a sales or financial background, and have the opportunity for somebody to mentor me and coach me and pull me up to the next level, such an invaluable thing. And then if I make a mistake, it doesn't cost me a lot of money either. If I screw up, I just got to swallow my pride, swallow my ego. A lot of people start business, they're losing millions of dollars in inventory and supply chain and all this crap happening. And
man, this does have less moving pieces, which means you can get out of the gate a lot faster. Like I started it at a company that gave me a base salary, but I had to earn the commission to keep that. And then I could make more than that. And what was nice is I'm 19 years old and I'm getting good training and I'm around people and I'm asking a lot of questions. I was labeled a fanatic because I asked too many questions, because I wanted to know, especially after 2000 happened. And I felt like I didn't put my clients in the best situation, you know, but it really opened up my eyes to like, wow, that was the best way for me to be an entrepreneur from 98 to 2005. And then I took a little harder route with books and, you know, creating
self-study
content and stuff like that. But it's rewarding. But I got to tell you, like, if I would have just stayed with that, my renewals, I walked away from my renewals. You know, I walked because in order to create the content I create and be with what was it, Park Avenue Securities, they wanted everything pre-planned and programmed, and so I had to cut ties in order to build this. So, but the nice thing is, you guys create it more entrepreneurial than they did, and create an opportunity where someone can actually build a business within that business. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity within that, and it's with a real product. It's with something that really people can utilize and benefit from, versus just, you know, is something that's a miracle potion that isn't a miracle.
What's something about the Rockefellers what's some of the factors about the Rockefellers, Garrett, that a lot of people don't know about today as a result about their money?
Well, look, one thing is that they were not nearly as wealthy as the Vanderbilts were at one time. The Vanderbilts actually had more money than the US Treasury. And so they were global, and with what was going on in shipping. And when Cornelius died, his oldest son doubled that estate in 9 years, but then he died, and they had no infrastructure or plan of what to do next. So it ended up getting decimated heavily over the next 54 years, because 54 years later, the first Vanderbilt died broke. Now, Gloria Vanderbilt had still inherited some money, and Anderson Cooper, her son. Could, there's some stories out there about them, but the last time it was documented the Vanderbilts got together for a family reunion, there wasn't a single millionaire there. So they gave $1 million to create Vanderbilt University, and they still have their name associated with that. But they used to own the Breakers in Rhode Island. They don't own it anymore. They own 10 mansions in New York. They don't own those anymore. They own the Biltmore estates in the Carolinas. That's gone. What they did was they became massively good at consumption, and they didn't have any type of structure to perpetuate the wealth, which really the Rockefellers did two things amazingly. Well, three. First off is they made oil affordable to everybody, and that really gave them a rise, right? But then what they did was the Rockefellers bought insurance policies, as you were talking about, on their kids. Said, hey, if a Rockefeller's born, we're going to use this. The death benefit comes in tax-free upon their death and helps to replenish the trust, because we think the trust will grow, but because of taxes, because of economics, because of interest rates or whatever, we want to create these additional safeguards. And they did that. But they also created a family office. And obviously they're worth so much money that they just had their own team working just for them. They had accountants, attorneys, investment advisors, cash flow specialists, risk management people working just for the Rockefellers. And that kind of where this concept of the family office was born. A family had their own financial office working just for them. In today's world, we've seen that become more accessible to the common person, because like what I built at my firm, Wealth Factory, is we went and said, let's find attorneys, and many of them, and accountants, and many of them, and make sure they communicate with one another. But then as we help our clients, they can meet with all these different people, and those people still have hundreds of clients versus just one client like the Rockefellers family office. But see, what happens is now when something happens to an heir, or when something happens to a Rockefeller, the financial team is still in place to support, and there was still instructions and ideas, and the kids came to meetings over time. And so this kind of changed things. That Wall Street's been really good at making people feel like insurance is boring, like it's not sexy, like why would you want to do that when we've got these really cool things over here? And they've created a really amazing narrative. But as you look into the uber wealthy, if you look at K1s of the Fortune 500s and look where they're putting money, if you look at corporate-owned life insurance, bank-owned life insurance, or you look at things like private placement life insurance or premium financing, those are just for, COLI, premium financing and private placement life insurance. The ultra wealthy all have those resources. The banks have those, corporations have those, and super wealthy individuals. But why is it that the average person or the middle class person has this narrative that says, no, I should just put my money in a diversified portfolio and let that ride. And then in a retirement plan, I'll be okay 30 years from today. Well, the news is out. 95% of them are not economically or financially independent when they're 65, but they're putting money in there. It's just, A, they're maybe not putting enough. B, the returns are not what they're purported to be because of a lot of fees and volatility and, taxes that they didn't take into consideration. And so the Rockefellers were saying, hey, we know how to make money in our businesses. We'll make money there. Yeah. We'll store money in these insurance plans where it's protected from liability, where it's protected from bankruptcy, where it's protected from taxation, where upon our death, we can replenish our entire trust. And they've got over 150 people getting interest off of this trust today. They're on their 6th generation, where the Vanderbilts have no trust. They're not passing money on because they had a family office and because they utilized the power of life insurance and its tax advantages. So that's a big departure between those two families.
How many Rockefellers today, Garrett, are supported and funded and financed by the Rockefeller Trust? You had a number.
When I wrote the book, it was over 150. Jeez. And we've been trying to get more information. We think it's closer to 200 people now. But David Rockefeller, who recently died, I saw some amazing interviews with him where he, as a young man, didn't really know how wealthy his family was. He found out from kids at school how wealthy his family was and how well known they were, because the family was really trying to cultivate their kids to learn how to be productive. And they would have these family retreats as he grew older, where he started to understand the amount of responsibility and money they had, because the retreats were around, how they could be proper stewards and what the family values were, and how they were going to operate overall. And so these retreats became an integral part of their family. And it's important because, the book, The Millionaire Next Door, really is the opposite, where there's these families that have some money, but they never tell anyone about it. They pretend like they're paupers or they don't have much cash. And then when they die with little planning, because they're not willing to pay for estate planning, that money falls into their heirs' laps and they go, what? And they blow through that money very quickly because they're not mentally prepared at all. And so that's one of the things you don't really hear about that book. And look, man, that was my book I read when I was like really very, very first year in college. Read that book. I'm like, dude. And it just reinforced me being a miser that pinched pennies and didn't want to spend any money. And then the next year I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, which was a complete departure from that. And I was like, wait, assets creating cash flow. Wait, like it's not about what you reduce, it's what you produce. It was like, that was a game changer. So I think that, it's interesting studying the Rockefellers. I haven't done it in years, but when I was writing the book, I just said, what is it that the Rockefellers do? This is the question I went in with. What is it that they do that anyone can do? Not what is it they can do that only wealthy people can do, because obviously having your own family office, you have to be pretty wealthy. Inheriting a bunch of money that if you're starting first generation, that they're in a different place now. But there were steps that they took. And I said, how can I design that to be most safe and effective for the majority of people that I'm teaching? Which means, there's some different ideas around insurance that we can discuss today that a lot of people,
yeah, for sure.
I go, well, what about this and what about that?
But I want to go back to high school, because you talk about the pain that you had, because I think a lot of people start a career or business because of the pain that they experience as a family member. And so was there like a specific pain, or is this the overall experience of growing up and having the lack of finances? Was there like a pain or a wound that you wanted to make sure that you healed?
Well, look, my dad went to college. And then his family wasn't doing well enough, so he left college to go to the coal mines to help support his family.
Got it, okay.
And then my parents wouldn't even let me step foot in a coal mine. Because when you're a coal miner's son and it's summertime, they're like, oh, we've got these great jobs for the summer. And they offer, back then it was like $25 an hour, which seemed like a ton of money.
Wow.
And they're like, it's just a trap. They're like, you're doing something else. You're going to use your mind. And so my parents really invested in that. And I saw the life of all my uncles that are miners, now Trona miners. I saw the life of, my dad, like pulling out dead bodies during mine rescue. I mean, there was just, it wasn't really a great life. And fortunately, I even had like teachers that helped me with this rural young entrepreneur competition, and like people that worked with my mom that knew accounting, showed me how to create balance sheets and income statements from a business when I was a teenager. So, and my family was super supportive. My grandfather and grandmother were my first clients. And look, we raised their net worth. This doesn't seem like a lot, but $270,000 over a 9-year period of time when the market took a dive, and their house was worth $39,000 when they died. So to give perspective of that, and that was like $50,000 tax-free to each one of their kids, and two of their kids within a couple of years had kidney transplants. That covered all their co-pays and all that. So it's like it was I got to see that impact, and they believed in me early on, and that was the helpful thing.
So when you're getting involved in finance, now one of the areas of work that you've done, I think you've studied a lot of. You wrote the book. What would the Rockefellers do? What was the most interesting thing as you're doing your research? You're doing a deep dive, obviously, in both the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts. What was the most impressionable thing that you saw? Because they were both men that built America.
David Rockefeller didn't really know his family was wealthy, other than the way that the kids at school would talk about it. But what they would do is they would do these semi-annual retreats where all the Rockefellers would get together, and they would like do these, like investing in their education and how to manage money, and they weren't just handing it off to the person and saying, here you go. Or the Vanderbilts, I mean, Cornelius had more money than the US Treasury at one point. He passed it on to his eldest son, who doubled that over 9 years, then died. And then the next 54 years was a trail that led to the first Vanderbilt dying broke. And they own 10 properties in Manhattan that they don't own anymore. They own the Biltmore estate, they don't own that. They own the Breakers in Rhode Island. They became wealthy socialites because they never really talked about like how to develop as a person. They didn't really have these principles. They didn't really have these conversations that the Rockefellers did. And now the Rockefellers have over 200 people benefiting from the trust, but you don't really see the trustafarian, trust fund babies that aren't doing anything. Where the Vanderbilts, I mean, yeah, there's Vanderbilt University. They gave them $1 million, but compared to what they had.
Yeah. Because they changed the name from Central University to Vanderbilt University? Was it?
Yeah, so it's like so they donate some money. So I just saw that they had completely different methodologies of how they handled things in their family, even though there was an extraordinary amount of wealth. And there's things that you could find fault in along the way, but there were so many good things. And I think the Rockefellers pretty much coined the term family office, where they had these financial people that worked just for their family, right? So now they had continuity. When Rockefeller would die, it was comprehensive, it was coordinated, they all communicated with each other. The Rockefellers knew it existed. They had this family bank that they could utilize the funds and not have to rely on everything else. And they had rituals, traditions, and symbols within the family that kind of held it together. It's like they ran their family like a business. And businesses have meetings, and they have mission statements,
and accountability,
they have,
responsibility,
and they have logos, and they have, and that's basically what the Rockefellers did. And you saw that, pass on a lot of wealth over these generations.
A lot of people didn't realize that Anderson Cooper was actually a Vanderbilt. He is the son of Gloria Vanderbilt, socialite, socialite, the fashionista, all that stuff.
Right.
He has an article out there that he doesn't believe in inherited wealth. He doesn't believe it. So your comments on that?
Right. He had to fight for his credentials, and he didn't have money handed down to him. I get that there's a lot of people, if they're not intentional, I find that two things happen. Either one, they go, I'm going to give everything to charity because I'm worried about ruining my kids, or I'm just going to give the money to my kids, and a lot of times that does create a problem. Instead, being intentional, I believe in having a family constitution, which captures your core principles, philosophies, and it's the preamble to your trust. So now you have your most important lessons that are left behind as signposts that could be a dynamic way for people to start interpret what has happened, why the family earned the money, and start to pass on these values that start to live in future generations instead of just handing down money. I think passing money on to the next generation tax-free is the easy part. I think having the person not feel entitled, not become spoiled, requires a lot of attention and intention along the way. So these family retreats that are happening all the time, a family office is part of that component. That family constitution that says, here's what we stand for, here's who we are, here's our mission statements, here's our guidance, here's our principles, and this is what we live by. And you start to instill that at a young age. So that it becomes part of how that family operates versus ignoring it. And then all of a sudden a bunch of money comes in and they're like, cool, let's go spend.
Right. For example, a lot of people today, sadly, because of certain policies over the years, they've been married and divorced. And there's a lot of blended families that happen. I'm a blended family between my wife and I. So how do you install that with older kids that sadly go back to the parents that's not part of this family conversation? They go back to, let's say, for example, we're capitalistic parents, but the exes are more socialistic.
Right. We saw a family come in their late 60s and work with Wealth Factory. And we were doing these legacy events. And the thing is, they're bringing in kids and even grandkids that they didn't have this along the way. But what happened is it transformed their family, even though they started late, because they really got intentional about it, which the crazy thing is, they were only doing $1 million of revenue when they came in. And even doing the family work led to over $10 million of revenue within 3 years. Because you had the mom who's in her late 60s wanting to be a grandma, but she's trying to help her husband in business. He's constantly so busy and overwhelmed. And then it turns out his son and daughter-in-law both had skill sets and connections that they brought into the business that started to grow that business. Now he's working 25 hours a week, retires his wife from having to work in the business. She gets to be a grandma. And all of a sudden there's room for creativity. There's new conversations happening within the family. So that's someone who started late. That's someone who their kids were already in their late 30s and they have the grandkids. But it just takes starting with, how do you have the first family retreat? I always recommend finding something that would be fun for the family to get them together and just have an hour where you just dedicate a conversation. So rather than trying to do it perfect all at once, because there might be people that are, harder to have conversations with,
win over to the conversation.
Or they're on a second marriage, or there's or there's someone that doesn't come to stuff or everything. And it leads by example, but allowing people to have a voice, because people support that which they help to build.
Yeah.
And when they can actually start to build it, like when we built our family mission statement, we actually have a big, metal, looks like a medieval shield that's above and our kids got to talk about what are the symbols that are going to be on that? What do we stand for? Who are we? And then we unveil it to the whole family.
Yeah.
And then we have these weekly meetings where we're talking about, and weekly, that's maybe a stretch. Most of the time we have these meetings and we're just like, hey, how are we doing on a scale of 1 to 10 as parents? What skill are you working on this week? Let's read through the family values this week. Next week, maybe we read through the family mission statement. So we have the very things that any business would have, but start integrating in the family so it starts to become part of our lives. And I get it could be complex over time. There could be divorces. There could be, turmoil within the family. But I think you start to diminish some of that by having this happen. And then maybe that first time you get together, there's an hour spent on it, and then you're like, hey, we'd like to do another one where we maybe spend a little bit more time. We'd like to hear what your thoughts are on it. Maybe even bring someone in to facilitate so that it's not the pressure just on one person who.
Smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, that means sit down, have a conversation, put the phones away, right? And have a actually conversation and dialogue.
Yeah, it changed our family's life when we went to Italy for a summer, where we weren't on the phones all the time. You'd go into the town square, this little town called Capalbio. There'd be like 100 people in this little town square getting gelato. They're playing cards, there's no phones. And I think it really got me connected to my kids at a different level. And it got us to start talking about things we wouldn't talk about because we're in the pool every day. Yeah. We're playing cards every day. Yeah. It just kind of broke the patterns of business that we have in our lives.
How old are your kids now?
They're 13 and 16. And my youngest, actually, when we filmed my special, opened for me and did comedy.
Yeah, very cool.
So 13 years old, crushed it, took the energy of the crowd up. It was really cool.
Are they boys, girls? With
2 boys.
Two older boys. You got a king's family, man.
Yeah, the 16-year-old, he's a little harder to get engaged sometimes. But we still, we have a cabin that we go to. And then we have these traditions that we do, like that the kids will drop about anything for. We have this thing called the Christmas roast, where you draw names. And so you kind of draw names, but you kind of sometimes cheat and ask for a name. And it's like permission to roast someone else in the family and just relentlessly tease them. And the kids are now involved in it. They film videos, they put on skits. So it's something you're like, ooh, this is what I'm trying to do, is stack the favor that they want to keep coming back during these times. I want to create odds that they're like, that's something I don't want to miss, right? That's the traditions.
I love it. But one thing I want, we're going on vacation next week, right? So, I want to inspire this to our guys at PHP Agency. We're going to Tulum next week, Cancun next week. And a lot of them haven't thought about this. Isn't it funny that we're in the life insurance business and yet some of our life insurance agents have not thought about this concept yet? But if I was going to inspire a quote unquote family retreat, and we're in Tulum the next 3-4 days next week, what can I simply introduce? What can I encourage our guys to simply introduce this to the family on a quote unquote vacation?
So I think focus on 3 basic things and emphasize at least 2 of them on the vacation. Every great religion, corporation, or long-standing family that's got family wealth has 3 things in common. Number 1, they've all initiated rituals in their life. Rituals are those things that you do on a daily or weekly basis to reinforce the habits that you want to create success. The second thing is traditions. Traditions are the things that you come together for. I mean, we've got our traditions that a lot of people have with Christmas or Easter, or we just had Valentine's Day. Like those are traditions, but like family traditions where you say, hey, like we do this thing that we call the Christmas roast. It's a family tradition. And everybody gets to draw a name and then you get to relentlessly tease them, and sometimes we make videos, sometimes we create skits, and it's the most anticipated thing in the year. That's a tradition that we look forward to. And it's one of those things that the kids will go, oh, I don't care what my friends are doing. I want to be with my family. So that's why we like traditions. And a tradition we want to initiate this year, we're calling it the Summer Olympics. And everybody gets to create their own thing. It could be anything from basketball or cornhole or fly fishing. Like, what's the thing that you want to do? And then we can have a little competition around it. And then we have this ugly, terrible green jacket that I won when I was Summit of the Inner Circle in insurance way back in the year 2004. And they gave me this oversized green jacket like I'd won the Masters as a child because I couldn't fit into it. Big shoulder pads, way too long. And I'm like, that's the Summer Olympics jacket if you win, and you have to take pictures of it in places you shouldn't be wearing it and send it to the family. So This is what I mean by traditions, things that kind of call you forward, like a family retreat could be a tradition. You might have a place you go to. We like to go to Italy every summer when there's not restrictions with COVID, and that could be a tradition. And then finally, symbols. Like I see you've got symbols on your shirt right now,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Logos that
Yeah.
are identifying markers. When you go to my cabin, you'll see right above the fireplace is a massive crest built like it was from medieval times out of steel, and it's got our symbols on it, and my kids can describe what it is and what it means to them. And so when you have rituals, traditions, and symbols, this is a big part of what you start with the family retreat. And rituals and traditions bring out a lot of fun, because you could say, what is one tradition that we could create that we would love to do every year, that we would come together, that is just a Sapala family tradition, right? And
Yeah.
you like get everybody's ideas, because people support that which they help to create. And then rituals could be, hey, I want to do a family meeting every week, or we're going to do a bedtime routine, depending on the age of your kids, right? Like you just create these rituals that become parts or little vignettes in space in your life that call forward an investment into family. Because I think legacy is the thread that we weave while we're alive that then impacts people while we're here and after we're gone, not just the money we leave behind. And so rituals and traditions are some of the most useful tools to create a lasting legacy today.
Thank you all so much for watching. And before you go, remember to subscribe to the channel right now and leave a like for that YouTube algorithm. Have a great day, and see you in the next one. Wealth happens because you do what it takes to make it happen. Well, folks, thank you so much for watching and subscribing if you haven't. With that said, have a great day, folks, and see you in the next one.